A well conducted inquiry, whatever be the outcome of it, is an asset to the employer.
Hello, dear viewers and listeners of Voice the Sasha Poshcast, your go to podcast for all things posh. After a brief hiatus, we are back with a brand new episode for you. How have you been? I hope I find you in the best of health and circumstances. I am your host, Shweta Bhatt, and in this episode, we talk about guidelines to expedite the inquiry process for redressing sexual harassment complaints at workplaces. And to share her expertise on the topic, we have with us advocate, posh consultant, workplace investigator, and Sasha team member Srividya Vadi. Srividya is the only Indian to hold the certificate from the AWI, which is the Association of Workplace Investigators, which is considered the gold standard for workplace investigators the world over. I'm very excited for this episode. So without further ado, let's jump in.
Hello. I often get asked this question as to how to expedite inquiries. I also get suggestions like, can you cut short on timelines? So I have a different approach to this issue altogether. So there are some pointers which you can keep in mind and work towards, whereby you can ensure that you have an expedited inquiry, no time wasted, and a thorough inquiry. So first and foremost, have a POSH process that is specifically made for your kind of business. You could be in the retail industry, it could be IT sector, hospitality, healthcare, education. Different business requires different approach in terms of POSH process. That is the first thing to be kept in mind. The second thing to note is to have an awareness process which is very robust and understood by the employees. What I have understood from the various awareness programs, employees prefer to get inputs as to what is expected out of them, what they need to be mindful of, what they need to actually do in order to create a safe work environment. So give practical aspects. The next thing is to understand whether the employees have actually understood what they are supposed to understand from the awareness sessions. It is by creating some interesting checkpoints. It could be quizzes, it could be creative participation in some contest, whereby you test their knowledge. It's like a fire drill. Needless to say, policy should be simple and it should be understood and it should be accessible. All employees should be able to understand where it is and be able to guide another person if required. All stakeholders have a thorough understanding of how the process works, who are the key participants. Any changes also should be understood by these stakeholders. SOP definitely helps. Standard operating procedures helps to give, again, practical application to your policy. First responders are another set of people who require specific training. First responders are the ones who are most likely to receive a complaint of sexual harassment. It could be HR, it could be IC members, it could even be managers and team leads. So they should know how to respond to the complaints, what information to seek for and what not to ask, where to direct them. So this should be made clear through specific awareness session for first responders. Complainant and respondent are much more comfortable when they have clarity as to what the committee is doing, what the committee is expected to do, and when they can see a closure in their matter. Pay attention to the law and validate the process periodically. Also make sure that your POSH policy is up to date with all the changes that has happened in the law as well. So this is a continuous and ongoing process. Have a documentation protocol that works for you. How do you record? Are you going to record? If you are recording, how you are going to share it to the participants? How you are going to store it? Who is going to make all the necessary documentation? Who is going to draft their report? Is there a template? If so, where are the templates? All these should be part of the documentation protocol, and it should be revised periodically. Analysis is the heart of the inquiry. Please keep ample time for any kind of analysis that you need to do in terms of coming to a reasonable findings. It should never be done in a hurry. So this should be factored in even before you conduct an inquiry. There you go. If you do all these in advance and take the inquiry through a clearly charted process with the plan, then I can assure you that you have a much expedited inquiry process already, and you can guarantee that it will make sure your inquiry is thorough and justice is delivered without any delay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Srividya, for coming on over here and agreeing to talk with us about this topic, very important topic on how to expedite the inquiry process and how to conduct an efficient inquiry process that is fair on all parties concerned. So I'll begin. We've received a host of questions from the team, and I'll begin with the very first question, which is the question of why expedite? What are the benefits of expediting the inquiry process?
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you for having me on Sasha podcast. Very happy to answer these questions on the topic of speedy inquiry and expediting the inquiry process. So I always find that as an external member, IC inquiries always begin with a bang, and there is a flurry of activities, flurry of emails going up and down as to how to do the meeting with the complainant, how to receive the complaint, then how to issue notice to the respondent. And this, after this first set of meetings, then there is a lull in the process. What sort of documentation should be adopted, and how this documentation should be verified with both sides, what to do about missing evidences, should we examine witnesses or not. Then comes the interim relief, how it should be granted, should we change it. So all these questions come, and there is an undue delay which drags the entire process to a considerable length of time. So sometimes, although the process is given 90 days of time, many times I do find that it extends beyond that as well. So there is a new set of evidences that come in. So how do we provide for all these and do an thorough inquiry within the given time that is allowed to us? So the benefit is definitely timely redressal. As you have heard, justice delayed is justice denied. So it always ensures to have the trust in the process when you actually do it in a timely manner. And obviously, both the participants, complainant and respondents, including the IC members, every stakeholder will find it much comfortable to have a process that is closed on time or even before time.
That is great. Justice delayed and is justice denied is so apt. And that is the whole point of the POSH Act, isn't it? I always tell when I conduct employee sessions and IC sessions, I tell the attendees that the reason or the rationale behind the 90-day limit is that swift redressal is done, which I think the other option that is to go to the legal option, go to the police, usually takes a very long time.
I find that internally there are a lot of things which we can manage so that the inquiry time is not unnecessarily delayed. Already we have certain timeline that we mandatorily have to keep up with. However, there are certain things, if we plan for it ahead of time, even before the commencement of inquiry, we can make sure that unnecessarily time is not wasted.
When it comes to expediting the process, what kind of challenges do you see coming up?
So I see challenges at every stage, to be honest, right from the receipt of complaint as to who should hear, who should be the first person to receive the complaint. Is it HR? Is it the IC? Or is it the manager? Or is it the colleague with whom the person is confiding about the issue? So where it starts and how that person should respond. Will that response have an impact on the future investigation if there is a formal inquiry that is happening? So challenges are right from the beginning till the recommendation stage, or even implementing the recommendation stage. If the complainant does not know whom to approach, there is a delay in raising the concern. If the person who is receiving the complaint does not know how to process this information or is unable to give the correct guidance to the complainant, there is again a delay. When it comes to the IC, we do not know which IC members should sit for the inquiry, who are available, which IC member is trained and capable of handling the situation. Is there any conflict of interest? All these, if we are not aware of, again there is a delay. What interim relief should be given? Will it conflict with the business requirements? Should the manager be involved? All these again and again, every single stage, we can face impediments and which we can avoid if we plan ahead.
That's a very interesting point, Srividya. Can you elaborate on what do you mean by planning ahead in an inquiry?
Certainly, Shweta. So, planning ahead for an inquiry commences even before the inquiry. Planning for an inquiry starts at the stage where you finalize your policy. So, right from the policy initiation, from the way you select the IC members and set up your committee and train your committee, your planning starts there. So, it is also part of planning to have a robust awareness program rolled out for all the employees, a separate awareness program rolled out for the HR and the managers who can be first in line to receive any sort of complaint. So when we address the awareness program for managers and HR, when we specifically tell them how to respond to when they are receiving a particular complaint, as to what they should tell the complainant, how they should document it, how they should communicate, how and when they should communicate to the internal committee. And the planning for inquiry starts right from there. So there is a lot of work which we can do even before a complaint arrives before an internal committee. So we can prepare ahead committee members as to making them aware that they might be called for an inquiry at any time. So this is a responsibility that an IC member should be very much aware of and is willing to participate, so that any inquiry comes, there is no undue delay in deciding which member is going to sit in which inquiry. We should put up a separate action plan for each and every redressal process. What are the issues at hand? What are we going to address? What type of evidences are we going to need to address this? Will there be any requirement for witnesses? What are the options for conciliation? This should be planned even before we meet the complainant. If we have this with us, then we will be able to ask the right questions to the complainant. So do that preparing for the interview or planning ahead for the entire investigation at the receipt of the complaint. So again, how is it possible? If we get the right information from the first responder. The first responder should be able to take in all the relevant information, which will be passed on to the IC, which will enable the IC to plan the inquiry in a better fashion. So as I said, the planning for inquiries start at the policy stage, at the awareness stage.
Coming to the next few questions, these are some very common questions that IC members ask about, when it comes to expediting the process and conducting an efficient inquiry. There are some logistical questions and some procedure-based questions that come up. For example, one of the very common questions is, if the law says that the respondent is allowed 10 days to respond to the allegations. But the question that comes up often is that if in the meeting with the respondent, if the respondent sort of gives a response then and there and the committee records it, do we still need to give them 10 days to further respond? Do we still need to wait around for 10 days? How do we handle that?
Yes, the respondent need to be given 10 days time. I'll explain why this is necessary. Because the entire inquiry process is guided by the principles of natural justice. Principles of natural justice demands that we give ample time for all the participants to submit their side of story. So when the law says allow respondent 10 days time, it is mandatory that we go by that law and we allow that time for the respondent. Respondent might have submitted his or her response to the internal committee, but then again, if they go back, see the complaint at leisure, their response, there could be some additions, there could be some substantiations, which they should be given rightfully. It's their time to think, reflect, and come back to the committee.
So, IC members often ask, how much time should the IC quorum give parties to get back to confirm their statements or to send their responses or to send their cross-examination questions or even respond to the findings report? How much time would be probably the most efficient time beyond which we can then go forward? How much time is too less time and not fair on the parties? What do you have to say on this?
So typically the ideal time prescribed for verification of documents and asking questions on it is 2 working days. So if we give any less time, that is not considered fair. So we can extend the time depending upon the volume of the content, the nature of evidences that needs to be listened to. So it is best to give a time of 3 to 4 days to respond on documents which are larger. Up to 1 week is something which the IC can consider depending upon the volume and content of the and nature of the data that needs to be verified. But no less than at least 2 working days should be given.
Okay. That's quite interesting. And as you are saying this, I'm also reminded about the very simple fact that I think gets overlooked, that all of these, complainant, respondent, witnesses, even IC members are all employees in the sense that they have other things going on in their day-to-day working life. And they have to make time for, responding to statements and coming up with questions. So it's only fair to give them, as you said, 2 working days.
Yes,
okay.
Most certainly. And they cannot just respond on that. This is something they are actually contesting, they are, want to make statement. They need time to think through it as well. It's just not about passively listening it.
Workplace investigations and domestic inquiries follow a certain timeline. POSH, sexual harassment complaints, inquiries follow a certain timeline as mandated by the Act and the policy. What are the similarities and differences that you have noticed among these two? Primarily because you've also, you also have expertise in conducting workplace investigations.
With regard to timelines, I find workplace investigations getting closed much swifter. Typically, it depends on how the company's code of conduct and ethics policy has formulated the timeline for a particular internal investigation. So, most often, it gets completed within a time period of 30 days. Many a times it will be conducted by a single investigator, or if it is a committee, that committee also has a lot of flexibility compared to a sexual harassment investigation. Most often we do a preliminary investigation before issuing a charge sheet. So the investigator or the committee will be privy of certain things, or they might have already conducted a first level of interview of the witnesses before actually deciding to issue a charge sheet. So many a times we find that that expedites the process a lot faster than the sexual harassment investigation, where the actual investigation begins only after the respondent submits the response to the complainant. However, in workplace investigation, we prefer to speak to the respondent as a last person who you will interview. So there is a lot of difference in the way it is handled. Typically, a workplace investigation should not take more than 30 days.
It's very interesting. So, Srividya, in closing, is there anything that you would like to tell us?
In closure, I think expediting an inquiry process does not mean cutting on the necessary timelines that are allowed to us, but it means is to have a planned structure for your inquiry, so that there is no scramble, there is no ambiguity in terms of what happens next, or when a particular circumstances arises, they are not at crossroads as to what to do. So that kind of enabling should happen at the back end, so that inquiries do not face undue delay. So in the end, a well conducted inquiry, whatever be the outcome, is an asset to the employer.
That's great. Thank you so much, Vidya. This has been a very enlightening conversation, and we have learned a lot about the process itself and things that we can do, small things that we can do to make it more efficient. And yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shweta.
And that was the episode, dear viewers and listeners. How did you like it? What questions are you left with? What insights do you have on this topic? Do write to us at voice@sashaindia.com. We would love to hear from you. Do also follow us on social media and subscribe to our monthly newsletter, Voice, if you want to know more about topics like this. Until next month, when we are back here again with yet another topic in the vast ocean of Posh. This is your host, Shweta Bhatt, signing off. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay indoors. And remember, together we can prevent, protect, and progress.